So welcome everyone to today's Holistic Spirituality program. Today we will cover the topic mindfulness over mindfulness. In spiritual practice, as we understand it from the Bhagavad Gita, we hear that the mind is the central tool for yoga practice or spiritual practice, because there all the thinking, the feeling, the willing is happening. Also, memory is connected to the mind. Just also by now, in this very moment, and when you participate in this program, you need your mind to focus your attention, to process what is being said, and so on. So the mind is always very relevant, and whether we pray, whether we study, whether we worship, and so on. And therefore, it's important to look at how we can, arrange our mind in the way that he or it is of most use for us. Or like if we feel we struggle with applying our mind properly, or our mind will not, or is not really cooperating with our efforts in spiritual life, to see what is needed and how can we influence the mind so that he's available to us, or it is, I would say he, because in German there's the mind is masculine, so in English it's it, or like, because so that it is available to us in a most effective way. And one aspect is that I work in psychiatry, so dealing with people's mind or like issues of the mind is part of my daily work. But it's often a very particular setting where we deal with, states of mind that are not necessarily common for any spiritual practitioner. There might be similarities. Sometimes you might be a bit down, or mind is going a bit crazy, as you would say. But it's a difference to having severe crisis or even a disorder. But we can, of course, maybe also connect a bit to such topics as well, if the mind is maybe a bit more severely influenced. But it's also generally that we look at what does the mind need in order to be available to us in its full capacity. The mindfulness, the term is it's understood as that you are able to be fully present with what you do, that your mind is with you, to speak, that when you're there, not only your body is present, but that also your mind can be present. Just today, I had someone, like in one of the courses I do on my work, we have one course that teaches about depression and the cognitive aspects of it, the thought patterns and how to influence thought patterns. And one person, they always have to, he had always to kind of draw something, or like externally appearing very absent or not really present, and saying in order to concentrate he needs to do this thing extra, so that because he needs to divert his mind from stuff that bothers him. So we can see the mind can be a very troublesome fellow, and he requires conscious influence, so that he is agreeing to be present with us in what we are doing. So in spiritual life, usually we have it easier. Our issues might not be necessarily that we struggle from depressions and other stuff, might be as well. I want to cover today a few aspects, go with you to one aspect or like one topic. We can have a bit of discussion and go to the next and see how much we will cover. So we'd like to keep it interactive. And yes, also welcome those who just joined now. Hare Krishna, Sharadi, and also, yes, Helen, welcome. All right. I hope you can hear me all well. Also, those of you on Facebook, of course, you may enter comments or questions in the comment section, and we will attend to it in time. All right, mindfulness. What does it mean if the mind is full? We all may have experienced, depending what kind of responsibilities we have in life. Those who have family, they have much more on their mind, than those who don't have family. Those who are involved in projects or big responsibilities otherwise in work have more on their mind usually than those who aren't. But also people who have neither of those, neither family or neither like being in positions where they have to deal with a lot of things, still the mind can be quite full. That your mind is full of thoughts and distracting you from, or not enabling you to really have a balanced and focused life. Why is it like this? What makes the mind so full, and how can he be, how to say, regulated in terms of how much he is really it? Oh, sorry, I'm always getting to the he. How much it must actually busy itself with. So I want to start with, first of all, look at motivation. That's a very crucial thing when it comes to our activities in daily life. Important to know is, why do I do the things I do? Because this motivation determines also how I experience clarity or unclarity, how much do I experience inspiration and drive, or how much do I experience rather, how to say, the kind of exhaustion or feeling drained and so on. There could be, of course, for any spiritual practice you take up, for example, let's say you dedicate yourself to chant a certain number of rounds. Some might simply say, okay, I do not take initiation, but still I dedicate myself to chanting 4 rounds, 8 rounds, 12 rounds of the Maha Mantra. In another spiritual tradition, it might be a different thing, attending certain services or performing certain services practically, or following a type of meditation, a certain type of lifestyle where you commit to particular regulations, where you say, that's the thing I'm committing to do. And one thing can be genuine inspiration. That's of course the ideal thing, that you genuinely inspired to do that because you feel it's a right thing to do, or I feel it suits me to do that, or like I'm convinced that it has value, that it is really also for my benefit. And then you have a good drive and you can focus your mind easily, because the most powerful thing is positive motivation. You know, if you have a conviction of faith in something, then your mind can thrive. Therefore, it's also so important to protect, or like to appreciate people's faith in something, in a given process. Sometimes we might have disagreements or like different views of what religion has the better process, and there's so-called preaching where someone wants to convince the other by, let's say, a bit more aggressive approach, and it might be disturbing though to the faith in general of a person in God or in a spiritual life. So that therefore one must be careful not to do damage instead of benefiting someone by preaching. It's also in the Bhagavad Gita said, the wise man does not, how to say, stop people from doing things. He tries to engage them or like influence them in a good way so that they might apply higher principles. So conviction is one very positive thing. Even more positive is love. I love to do the things I do. I want to do them. I want to share. I want to give. So I come from the heart, so to say. It's really my deeper sense of that's what I am and what I want to share with the world. So these motivations are certainly, I guess, the most desirable. And then if we come from that place, certainly our mind is rather peaceful and focused and powerful. I think we do not need to be concerned about much if we can have that. So at the same time, it might also happen that our motivation is not coming from this place, like genuine inspiration, conviction, or love. It might also come from fear. Fear is also a powerful motivation, but has a different effect on the mind. Fear might mean I am more concerned with what others think of me if I do or don't do the things I do in spiritual life, let's say. I better do that in order to not be judged. You know, I'm expected to do this much or that much or follow that rule, regulation, not so. I do because I want to belong, for example. I want to be accepted. So it could be coming from a place of fear. So fear might still lead to like to worry, and like more like it's not, because it's not just a genuine force where you come out of yourself like from love, then it's rather something that connects you also with doubts, and you always have, so to say, second thoughts, also subconsciously. You also always kind of, your mind tends to worry. Am I perceived the way I want to? Do others really accept me, or like, appreciate me, or like that? Is even God satisfied with me? What I do or don't do, in spiritual master, and so on. So that could be one thing, fear. But then also guilt, which is closely connected to it. Guilt can also be a powerful drive or motivation to do something. Doesn't mean it's healthy or productive, but it can be a powerful force. Like having a moral.
I can't hear you. You've muted yourself.
I think you switched, your sound is off.
It's back because
Better.
it switched itself off strangely. So okay, guilt was the last thing I mentioned it as a possible motivation. That when I'm like, for example, devotees always serving, and even if I feel exhausted or like don't have the capacity really, and I still agree to do because I feel guilty that I do something wrong, or I'm a bad person. I'm a bad person if I don't. And then my mind is always also very occupied, and I do not respect boundaries. And then I'm in conflict with myself, and my mind is aware, hey, actually I do something that is goes against my physical and mental health, perhaps. And subconsciously it's there, consciously I might suppress it. And so my mind is to some degree occupied with the disbalance I create by that guilt. And so guilt is influencing the mind in that way. Could also be, besides guilt, pressure, could be a motivation. We talk of stress. There's this distress and eustress, like whatever they call it in English. So one is a positive motivation, the other could be a rather destructive force. And I got to prove myself, like this. You have to show that I'm capable, or I have to show that I do this and this and that, so that I'm respected, and so on. Or I'm not good enough, so I have to be better. That could be a certain type of pressure one puts on oneself, on one's mind, and that tends to lead to restlessness. Even if I perform, let's say, chant a certain amount of rounds, follow certain principles, and do this fasting and perform that worship, and whatever, attend so many classes and whatever. So still, my mind always thinks it's not enough. We got to do more, and so in this way, the mind is full. Also, again, with certain overly expecting attitudes and maybe self-criticism. So this way, there's these fear, guilt, pressure. These things tend to rather disturb the mind rather than focus it and give it a positive drive, like in contrast to genuine inspiration, conviction, or love. So now I would like to put the question out there to you to reflect generally in your spiritual life, the things you do. Take a moment and reflect on, why do I do the things I do? What is my main motivation, my main drive to do that? In which ways or in which aspects do I more come from genuine inspiration, or from love to share myself, or from conviction? In what places do I more come from a place of fear or guilt or pressure? So, and to be a bit aware, because mindfulness is in the first place becoming aware of what is happening. So observing the mind is one very important thing to do for any spiritual practitioner, no matter in what tradition you are at home. In some traditions, it's way more in the foreground, like in Buddhism, like everyone is now really into Buddhism, because then there's this whole mindfulness is actually, how to say, adopted from there, if not stolen from there, because people tend or like to take a particular thing that feel, oh, that fits in our lives, and everyone is about mindfulness. But if it's about like regulating yourself and performing austerities like Buddhists do, yeah, we don't have to get too religious here, you know. Or if it's about yoga, oh yes, asanas and this and that. But then, oh, regulations, vegetarianism, what, no drugs, and what, regulated sex, and what, and then that's anyway, it's not anymore so attractive. So, but mindfulness is important also for Christian practitioners. You know, you find in any spiritual tradition the point, the power to be fully aware of your own mind. It's a really basic necessity, and I'm also in my process. And I'm not saying I'm fully mindful. You know, I'm practicing to be mindful, and yeah, perhaps by now, so when we spoke about that, maybe someone of you wants to respond or address what has been said so far in regards to motivation and where do I come from and what do I observe. You know, I know for myself that I tend to, the pressure one is a big one for me. You know, I got to prove myself, or I got to be better than before. So that's something I know for myself for sure. Okay, there's Shardia. Please unmute yourself, and if your internet allows, please, yeah. Also, if you can be present with camera, would be nice.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I've literally got like one bar of signal, so I'm not sure I should try attempt at the camera. But I wanted to say that it seems that often there's different layers to what is motivating us to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I think about my own life, you know, I might be doing a particular service, and then, you know, if I think, why am I doing this? One answer might just be like, well, it needs to get done, like someone needs to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is also, well, the service is also inspiring to me, and I feel like it makes a contribution. But then if I go deeper, you know, the way I am doing the service might be because of this pressure, which I, you know, put myself under, in the sense of like feeling like I almost need to do something in order to deserve Krishna's approval or his love. You know, it's interesting, you know, that but I think it often, or at least for me, it seems like being actually aware of what the motivation is going to take some time.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, I think somehow you need to, and I know maybe you can provide further insight into that. It's almost for me like you need to almost get to a level where you tap in your subconscious mind to see what is driving you there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I certainly agree with you when it comes to that there is some work to be done in terms of reflecting deeper. Awareness is not something that just superficially happens. It's something, yeah, where you have to enter and question your mind a bit deeper. Ideally, of course, with a person that you trust and like who may also challenge you in regards to what he or she sees, what your motivation might be. We tend to not see ourselves so clearly, or we have usually a kind of biased look at ourselves. Can be also negative. I don't always only talk in terms of positively biased, saying, "Oh, I'm actually doing good. I come from a good place." Can also be negatively biased, that I see myself way worse than I am. And it could also be. Yes. Something I would say to that is also, as the famous saying goes, the fruit is being judged, the tree is being judged by the fruit it brings. And coming from, let's say, a place of, as we said, pressure and fear and guilt brings at the end also a bit of a different result with it than if I would come from genuine inspiration, love, and conviction. Question to the group also, what do you think? How would you, in terms of results, what would you assume comes also with the whole kind of pressure, fear, and guilt thing, in contrast to what comes with genuine inspiration, love, conviction? How would you, what could be possibly a marker by which you could identify the outcomes of those? Yes, here it is.
Okay. First of all, when we speak about the mind, I understand that the speed in which the mind travels, your thoughts travel, is far faster than the speed of light. So one has to have proper control over the mind. Now, in controlling the mind and in serving Krishna, we should not feel that kind of pressure, but just strive from within to do our best. Because we are serving Krishna, whatever we do, whether do temple service, whether you do cooking or anything whatsoever, automatically it will be the best because you're doing for Krishna. If that is in the mind, then I feel there's no pressure. The motivation is working for Krishna or serving Krishna, and that's the best from within would come out. That's what I feel.
Yes, if I understand you correctly, what you are saying is, if you come from a true point of faith and conviction and inspiration, it will reflect in also a mood of being genuinely a servant without any, how to say, disturbance in the mind. You will just, it will come naturally to you. There's nothing that makes you put you down or something. Okay, yeah, Dee, please.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. So I think with me, particularly when it comes to practicing spirituality, I think
Oh no, you froze.
looking back, it's from say if I'd been busy and not chanted, then I really feel like, oh my God, I'm not chanted. So now when you asked before, when you depends on what motivates you to do something, what experience you kind of, how do you feel about doing it or the result? I always find that say if I was reading or done a sangha and then feel inspired to chant, the entire experience is completely different. If I was say, running back home thinking, oh my God, I'm not chanted today and I feel really terrible, and let's just do at least one round before going to bed. Obviously I know it's still fast, you just don't feel uplifted. I still feel slightly better because I've done it, but coming from a place of inspiration or love for Krishna is completely different when I chant in guilt, essentially. So I thought I'd just share that. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, I fully resonate with what you're saying when it comes to upliftment. Inspiration usually uplifts you, empowers you, whereas fear at most, or like guilt, can kind of balance, like like takes away a bit the edge of the like the bad feeling, but doesn't necessarily lead into you're kind of peaceful, but not necessarily you're not thriving from it. Yes, yeah, Sharadira.
I think one thing I've definitely.
Oh, we don't hear. Also with D, but the connection was shortly gone. We don't hear you, Sharadira.
Hare Krishna.
It's not, now we hear you.
So one thing I've noticed of myself is that when my motivation is, coming from that place of pressure, then one result is no matter how much I've done, afterwards, I still feel extremely critical of everything I've done. It's like even if I get like, it doesn't matter how much like external approval and acknowledgement I've gotten for what service I've done, I still feel like, I've got this list of things in my head, which just like, that could have been done better. This could have been done better. So I'm not, that feeling of, I would say, deep inner satisfaction and peace is missing. Even though others might actually be content and be, happy with what has happened. So I think that for me, it's like that kind of indicates that then the motivation, wasn't that pure to begin with.
Thank you for sharing. Yes, yes, certainly. It's a good point with how much am I also able then to receive positive feedback from others if I feel rather from coming from a place of guilt, for example, and fear, because then I might tend to block it off and like stay with, no, I'm actually pretty bad, and struggle with that. Yes, let's connect to two more things in this regard. One thing is finishing one thing before doing another. That would be the ideal. Because that's also often, if you talk about mindfulness, that we have so many things in our mind which are simultaneously to be done still, or like on our, they kind of, how to say, active posts. They're not kind of, to say, closed or like completed. And naturally, of course, in life, it's not, probably we will not be able to always close the things to the maximum extent before we start something new. But there is a range always, of course, for things where we can decide consciously how many things we do at the same time. I noticed on myself before, like years before, when I read books, for example, I read one book and I completed the book and I read another book. But now often what I do is I have one book, I started and read another book, and at times having started like 3 books or 4, like, and feel, oh, okay, I got quite some things there. I sense the influence if I'm aware, because it's kind of a bit of a, it's, how to say, sometimes hard to really grasp it, but it's kind of an uneasy feeling. It's kind of a bit of something is nagging inside of you. Oh, this is there, that this is open and started, it's not really done. So there, like, I got to refocus and say, okay, now finish this one and then go to the next and so on. Some books anyway, it's a rereading and I know them, so I might, okay, be satisfied just reading some parts of it. But I just noticed this something developed in my life for a while. And also another example where I noticed where dissatisfaction came in and kind of like a really unpeaceful mind is, since I took the initiation with chanting, and then for a while then I did not really stick up to, of course, the 16 rounds, and thinking, because I do other services a lot, I do read, I do write, I do classes, I do this and this and that, and so my chanting kind of varied a bit. But I noticed at some point I really felt part of my mind was not in peace, because I felt I'm not actually in tune with what I vowed, and getting back to chanting a full 16 rounds, even if I don't manage it every day. But I feel like that's something that also gives me, again, peace, centers me when I stick up, or like, again, go back to a commitment I made. So that's another thing, being aware of the commitments one makes, and be also careful to make commitments that are really long-term. Like, okay, short commitments for I do this tomorrow and then it's done, that's one thing. But saying from now on I will do like this and this and that, that's a bit of another story. And then rather one is challenged to prioritize again. So perhaps you also know that if you look back and you see there's certain commitments you have in your life that you said like some years ago, oh, this I will do, that's important for me. And as soon as at some point when we neglect those things or do not really live up to them as we originally intended, then the mind is like subconsciously dissatisfied and restless, and maybe guilt comes and maybe pressure. And so to refocus, and why did I start something in the first place? And what would help me also to get back to how I want to have it actually. That was something also with the motivation and with the starting one thing, or like finishing one thing before starting another, ideally. Also what Shardia before mentioned, someone has to do it with certain things. Some people are content with, oh yeah, there's someone else doing it, fine, I'm glad. Others are those people who are these someones who just take up then the task and do the duty. And so what happens also here is like the mind, if the mind's very occupied or can feel pressured, is when I take over the responsibilities, that are actually not mine. There's also a thing to be really aware of, to look at, okay, things are needed to be done. I also know, for example, in a temple or in another place, or like at work, wherever you are, there are always things to be done. But the question is, whose responsibility is it in the first place? I might jump in and say, yes, I take it over. I have capacity, or I like to do it. But at the long term, at the long run, I might feel like, okay, I carry that load, but actually, I have other things that I have more, let's say, priority in my life. And then to look at again, is it really my responsibility, or is it actually someone else's responsibility I'm carrying for him or her? And maybe also you want to reflect on that question, like, is there in your life, if you look at, do you tend to take over responsibilities that would actually belong to someone else? Or, maybe if someone of you wants to respond or to share, like, if you see in your life something like that.
I always do that, like even in services, and just, just like Shaidia said, because it's got to be done, but even if it comes to household chores or anything, nobody's cleaned yet, somebody's got to do it, I'm just going to get it done. But you're right, because what then it does is it impacts other ways, other things in your life when you're just carrying other people's burdens. I suppose it's okay. You need to have clear boundaries, I think, because if not, it can become quite sort of toxic for our own well-being. And I really resonate with the idea of multitasking. You said I do the same thing. At one point I had like 4 books I just started, and I just found I wasn't reading anything, because you'd read a chapter here, chapter there. So I now vowed, and I promised somebody else, I'm not going to read more than 2 books at one time. So I literally just said, no, I'm going to now finish all the books I've started before I start reading a new book. And when I start reading a new book, I'd only allow myself to juggle 2 books max, because you're right. If not, you get this feeling like, oh, I've got so many books waiting to be read. And you try and read things concurrently, and you just don't end up reading any, So.
Yes, yeah, very good point. Yeah, out of a lot becomes nothing, or I get some, yes. What we address here is that there is a capacity of the mind, which is very limited. And to mindfulness might also mean to be aware, what is the actual capacity I have mentally, physically, emotionally. And that might be a difficult task, particularly if you have the habit to continuously actually walk over our boundaries, or to not recognize and respect them, always try to expand. The other extreme could be, okay, I become miserly, I just like hold back. Well, that's another story, but like to also be clear, to develop a sense of when is it actually enough, when there's a healthy boundary. And I would like to add another thought to that, or like a question: how can you recognize when your responsibility ends and someone else's responsibility starts? So we can talk about, okay, we might carry the burden of others, and in the moment, in the time of action, we might just feel, okay, that it works, and in hindsight often we think, it's not really mine actually. And what do you think, what helps you recognize, or like what is your responsibility and that of someone else? Okay, between, please, Shardia, unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I actually wanted to comment on a previous point, but with regards to this point, I would say it's important to, if you're working, if you're in a situation like a project or in a professional setup, I think you should reflect upon what you have agreed to do, because usually there is kind of like, we have certain roles, and there's clearly outlined like tasks and areas of responsibility. So I think that is one way, because it's like, in the moment, there's so many situations where something just needs to be done.
Mhm.
But then when you continuously just, do something because it needs to be done and someone needs to do it, then you sometimes enable other people, not to take up their responsibility. And they kind of then learn this pattern that I actually don't have to act. I can just kind of like let things be, because there are other people that are always going to step up, and kind of save the situation. So it's difficult in that moment to step back. But I kind of feel if you don't, then, you kind of create like a platform for that to happen again and again in the future.
Very good point. Yes. Make, like I say, to not teach people to, how to say, give away the responsibility. Mm. Something I had in mind from also from my work experience, since I work with people like more in a psychotherapeutic or like psychiatric context, also often is about change. Something in my life has to change. The way I do it now is not working out. It might even might be up to a degree where people have serious issues, also socially, financially, with family, with friends, work, and so on. And something needs to be changed, but someone else should do it for me. Not necessarily so explicit that they say it, but the attitude is there. I'm not really willing to change that which I have to change, though otherwise my life crashes completely. And to recommend, then people could go, for example, in a mode of helplessness. Oh, I'm so helpless. I'm incapable to do. And helplessness, depending how strong it is and how it is communicated, might make the other person feel, oh, I should take over. I should help. Helper reflex, or someone is helpless, and then I do. But here also to resist and to be, first of all, clear, wait a second. Do I have to learn to a certain thing, or that this person has to learn a certain thing? Do I need to learn, for example, to take up a responsibility to call certain offices or arrange certain papers? Or do I have to learn to pay my bills? Do I have to learn to express myself more clearly? Or is it the person that is in front of me and is being helpless? So there to see, like, wait a second, no, you have here something that you want to do. So I can help you do it, but I'm not doing it for you. So this is also, it's very important that people have or show certain helplessness, or like try to make it even like as if you can do them a great favor if you take over. Be alert and check at who has something to learn here, who has something to change. Is it me or is it the person? And they're like, draw a line. Wait a second, no, that's not my task. I know this. I know how to do this. You don't. not saying it necessarily, but understanding. Yes, Sharadil.
So I think, one thing that makes this challenging is that we want to, most people, we want to be liked by others. And I think subconsciously we have like quite a strong need often to be perceived as a nice person. And therefore, if someone comes to us and they express like a need and they seem to need our help, then we often don't want to decline. But I know there's this concept, I'm not exactly sure if I remember it correctly, maybe you'll know probably, is that you can have like I think they call it a soft and a hard yes and a no. So I think it's about learning, because you can say yes, but you can say yes in a way that you're actually saying it, but you're quite resentful. And, you're just doing it because you feel you have to. Or you could say no in a way which is soft and kind, but still firm. So, I mean, you can say no while still, showing that you care about the other person, but at the same time showing that you care about yourself.
Yes.
So I think, because I think it's difficult to just overcome that need for other people to, to like us or to feel that we care about them.
Yes. yeah, it can be very impactful to have, let's call it also a compassionate no, you know, to be able to communicate that. I like to say sometimes when in a therapy, for example, setting or coaching setting, and someone says, or like, I think you can do that for me, or like, or you, or in some way, directly or indirectly, expresses the desire that some task can be, how to say, outsourced to me, to say, I wouldn't do you a favor if I would accept that. And then like to let it kind of settle a bit, because I need to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. It can ideally be the same thing, but often it's not. But I don't do you a favor if I just comply to support you in your unproductive patterns. So then actually saying, with this, I would be more of a friend to you than if I would simply apparently help you out, but allowing you to just, let's say it more drastically, allowing you to use me. There will be also the other thing with that. When you address that, for example, I want to be liked and therefore I'm willing to commit to do and do and do. From another perspective, that could also be looked at, okay, I allow others to use me based on my need to be liked, you know, and it can be sometimes maybe a bit more subtle or not so drastic, but it could also turn into ways where people consciously or subconsciously take advantage of others because they know, yeah, this person anyway, he or she, you know, always needs me to do something for me. So yeah, then I rely on it. Yeah. Yes.
Prabhuji, it's very important to learn how to say no very tactfully in these matters. From my experience, it's difficult for me to say no many a times in my Rotary when they say, please join this committee, please do this, please do that, you know. And I mean, you say no, you tell the person, look, I'm a bit busy, and you know, is there a nice, smooth, clean way of saying, please leave me alone and manage with some other people?
Yeah, I mean, that depends a bit on the relationship that you have with these people.
Yeah.
If you generally, for example, you have a more of a, let's say, distant, formal relationship with the colleague.
Yes.
Then you could also be, let's say, have a formal way saying, unfortunately, I'm not capable, or it's not in my capacity to take up the job. I kindly wish for you to find someone else. If it's someone whom you're more close with, like friendly, you say, you could be more frank and say, hey, wait a second, I have the feeling you just want to, whatever, load that on me, but I'm not willing to. You know, nothing about you, nothing against you, but I just don't feel like doing that. You know?
I know. We can say all that, but at the same time, please, the other person is also trained to get somebody to say yes for, you know, like how we are trained. The other person who's asking also knows how to get their stuff done.
I know my experience in India was like, since, I mean, culture also matters. What kind of mentality is there? What kind of, how do people deal with yes and no is also, of course, related to cultural norms. And I remember like being in India and just saying no, it's like saying nothing. It's just like, it doesn't count. you go to some shop and you say, no, then it's just ignored, conveniently. Oh yes, I show you this. No, I won't. I'll show this and show you anyway, and then give you this and give you that, and it requires quite some persistence and a strong assertiveness to. I mean, there's some like say heartfelt. It's kind of, I don't mind even so much. It can be really bothering, but often it's more like it feels also it's part of the culture, a bit like that. It is kind of an accepted norm. It is not considered, how to say, unethical or something. But where it's like in Switzerland, or if you're somewhere in Europe, in Germany, or like that might be different, or in England, I don't know how it's there. Like their politeness means something else. You know?
They will understand when you try and say something like that, but here they just don't understand. They can't take no for an answer, in short.
Yes. Sometimes also
Thanks for your understanding.
sometimes also you see Srila Prabhupada conversations he has with some Indian, either might there be scholars or people, and for an Western ear that sounds like they're heavily arguing, they're really kind of fighting, but it seems like this is the way also how they just used to discuss, and yeah, like this.
Yeah, thank you.
So back to also mindfulness in regards to mindfulness. So having too much responsibilities on your mind is also draining, and like gives you, it's like kind of stretching, or like, how to say, draining your mind's capacity to focus on that what is actually relevant for you. So like here we can also distinguish, saying, okay, if I really carry burdens of others, to make moves, or like first of all being aware, what do I carry of others, and how can I give it back? To have the courage to say, hey, yeah, I agreed, for example, to something, a commitment. I feel, first of all, maybe it's not in my capacity, or I even feel I shouldn't have, or like I should not have taken in the first place, to review that, and with this person saying, wait, we have to agree anew what's going on here or not. So there's also, of course, here the quality of assertiveness and honesty has to be there. And it could be an obstacle to think, oh, whether this person likes me or not. You might be surprised how much that person might like and respect you more when you do that. I also had that with one devotee I had for a long time. This devotee was rather indirect to me, not really saying. I asked a few times for, let's say, feedbacks and stuff. And at one point, finally, there was honesty where we said some critical stuff to each other. And then I also felt and told him, well, yeah, now I respect you more, because now like that's there we really meet genuinely, and how we view each other, and even if it's critical, but it's actually better than to pretend not to, yes. All right, I would like to share also 3 qualities that I find very important when it comes to the mindfulness that we want to achieve, because we addressed a few things now in the session. We addressed the motivation. Why do I do the things I do? What is driving me? It's about also finishing one thing before starting another. We also talked of properly estimating one's capacity. We talked of now distinguishing responsibility from others in regards to our responsibility. And there are 3 qualities I want to shortly bring in. Just give me a second. So you see that, huh? Yes, self-control, satisfaction, and patience. Self-control meaning, let's say you tend to be over enthusiastic and say, oh yes, I can do this, and yes, I can do that. To control yourself, not to follow certain impulses that you involve yourself, or like occupy yourself with tasks or duties that actually are not fitting in well. Self-control could also mean then resisting fear of rejection, and rather like connecting to self-confidence, saying, no, I'm also valuable if I do not constantly do favors to people, or I'm also likable when I say no, because maybe then I'm even more respectable if I'm able to not depend on others' approvals. Satisfaction as a quality that helps to stop the mind even for striving for more and more and more, and never ending more. Being satisfied with what is, with what you achieved, or what you will achieve, for like also the amount of duties and tasks that you have at the moment, to say that's fine for me. It's a choice, because we unlearned that, I guess, in our life at some point. I mean, I grew up in former East Germany at a time where there was still communism, and also people there had to be satisfied with way less. It was not a question of struggle. Like, of course, there were things lacking. That was clear. At the same time, I remember also generally people had a different way of being more satisfied, and when later on they were over flooded with all this kind of consumerist lifestyle where you have so many things you can't even how to say accommodate, and so many stuff you got to have, and so many running after this and running after that, and satisfaction is out the window because the economy doesn't work when you're satisfied with what you have. Actually, the economy lives from that people have a sense of dissatisfaction all the time. Because who would buy stuff all the time if they would be satisfied? You know, and so that's an important quality. It's also highlighted in scripture to say, be peaceful, whatever you got, appreciate it, value, and allow yourself to stay with that and be peaceful instead of thinking you have to strive for more, or strive for that, or like, you know, being in fear to lose it. But no, it's like in deciding to be in faith, in trust that this is okay how it is, and in this way the mind can rest. You know, patience is another thing, something that drives the mind a lot. Something I know for myself also. Patience, it grew over time. It's still, I guess, not my strength, but I'm on it in different ways. For some stuff, I'm just not patient. With other stuff, I learned to be more patient. With my patients, for example, on work, I'm more patient. That's about giving the time to things they need. And also in the Bible, as I said, Jesus, like, it's making this point, everything has its time. When you plant a seed, until it kind of sprouts has a time, until it becomes a whole plant has its time, until it brings or bears fruits has its time. So on the harvest also has its time in a particular chronological order. So to be aware of that and say everything at its time. But we are often also, so the influence nowadays is like instant everything, instant this, instant that, just click here and do this and then you have it. You know, express deliveries in 24 hours, everything now, you know. So, you know, I just remember back then when I was a child still, and no internet and all that stuff, and a letter till it was written, till it arrived, it took a week. Not like now with a WhatsApp message where like you kind of maybe feel pressured, you consciously maybe not click on reading it because then the person notices you have read it and expect a response immediately. So there like was much longer response time. Now we have like freaking out, like in half an hour already I sent this message, why didn't I get a response? You know, like, and the mind is like all the time, being dissatisfied again and expecting things. That's another thing. So many expectations we might have which fill our mind with dissatisfaction, and to also reduce or like sometimes also drop unnecessary expectations and to be more peaceful by that, you know. So these three qualities I find are important to have in mind and to meditate upon them. What would that mean? You can maybe also take it now to you and say, in my life, my daily life, how could self-control manifest more? How could satisfaction manifest more? How could patience manifest more? It's not about becoming completely a different person, the ideal, you know, mindful person. But the question could be, what could be a little thing I can do already now in my daily life that would bring me to more self-control, patience, and satisfaction? You know, maybe stay with it a bit and for a moment and say, what could be a small thing in your daily life that could facilitate you being more satisfied, patient, and self-controlled? Yes, Steve.
Sorry, one question. So around satisfaction, obviously you said that we're not satisfied, constantly trying to get more things, buy new things and what have you. But there's a fine line, isn't it? Being satisfied as to where you are and striving to become a better person. So how do we distinguish the fact, because you can say, oh, I'm satisfied about my job, about my circumstances, about the services I do, without genuinely looking at situations better. So how do you kind of draw that fine line between being satisfied with what you've got, but equally doing, going the extra mile and improving yourself?
Mhm. So the distinction between satisfaction and complacency, you mean?
Yeah, sort of. You can sit back and say, oh, I'm satisfied, I don't have to do any.
Mhm. Yeah, satisfaction might be maybe confused with some type of laziness, or as we said, complacency. On the contrary, if you're satisfied, let's connect with what that means actually, because sometimes when I had this discussion a few times, and mindfulness, we can connect to the topic. Mindfulness also means being fully aware what are the words, for example, that I'm using, and what is the state of existence when I say being satisfied. In German, you have this word is called Zufriedenheit. Frieden means peace, and zu means kind of, you could understand it as moving toward peace, like bringing yourself into a state where you feel peaceful. Peace means no agitation, no disturbance, like where you're at, you just feel comfortable. And what do you do when you feel comfortable and good? It's not that you just go asleep and you become inactive. No, when you're actually satisfied, you often feel rather genuinely inspired to do stuff, or like to generate ideas, because you're at a good place. Whereas when you're completely stressed out or like dissatisfied, then again we can come to the mode of pressure and fear and guilt and so on. But that's and from there we think, oh, I have to improve or I have to do better. And actually be careful to look at where is truly a genuine need for my change or improvement, and where do I feel like I rather try to serve ideas or expectations of others. I think this often you have to learn to look at also what does it mean for me to be successful, for example, also in my spiritual life, in my material life. And if I, for example, would feel, hey, that's actually enough for me and I feel fine with that, what I have, but then I see, for example, others doing more, others expressing judgments about like one has to do this and this and that, and to see what is actually an influence from the outside that is valid for me, and what do I have to reject also. Satisfaction would rather, my understanding, true satisfaction leads to also maintaining it, like what makes you satisfied, instead of slacking off, because satisfaction, you have to work for being satisfied also. It's not that it comes like, complacency can mean, yeah, I did something and now I rest on my laurels, so to say, forever. Yeah. Once I did a heroic deed, not for the rest of my life I'm a hero. No, like you once did it, and you, in order to reconfirm it, you got to continue to be heroic, if you want to be like that. So like with productiveness, like once in my life I have worked a year, so I did it, so I can stop now. It doesn't work. Of course you continue, but the amount is important. Yes, Sharadia. Awesome.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I think maybe you can elaborate on this, but I was thinking, as devotees, in order to be satisfied, it's very helpful if we meditate upon the fact that Krishna is in control, like consciously meditating upon that. And together with that, then always doing our duty, but then with detachment. Because if you are detached, then you decide that, okay, I'm going to do my best, but regardless of the outcome, I'm going to be content. I'm going to be satisfied because Krishna is in control. But I find that if we don't have that detachment, then it is challenging to be satisfied, whether you are actually doing as much as you should, or if you're doing nothing. You're just not without detachment. It seems very hard to be satisfied.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Yeah, detachment. Yeah, genuine detachment in the sense of not claiming control, but allowing Krishna to be in control and be guided by him. Like say, I'm your tool, and I'm satisfied with being your tool. It's not up to me to how to say, determine the result. Yes, yes. Mhm. I had a last thing I also wanted to bring into the session. If you look at, okay, when I find myself perhaps more often than not that I'm rather mindful than mindful, to look at how do I potentially make things difficult for me? Means how do I contribute to my mind being so full? Instead of that, I can be mindful and say I'm aware, and I can also clearly. So that's we addressed already the topic of responsibility. And there will be a bit more an aspect of it to be aware or mindful of how do I contribute to the, let's say, a mental difficulty that I experience. Often might be being stressed out, or what's burnout is today is something people experience a lot or use at least this phrase very often, or like being overly pressured and stressed and dissatisfied. And to look at, well, what is it in me, in my habits that might be simply might it be my living everyday habits, or like my work habits, my communication habits, and how do I contribute to that? So that would be an important question also to meditate on that, and then to see where is your range of influence. Some stuff, of course, we are exposed to, people's opinions and behaviors, but then there are those things that we decide for ourselves. Yes, this was something I wanted to throw in, maybe for like kind of the end. So maybe we can, if there's any more from your side, like a comment or question in hindsight, or something you want to share, so we can have a round for that. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I actually had a question, which was about something you said early in the session. Is it okay if I ask it now, or should I ask it later?
No, please. Then now it's good. Best time.
So, a question that I had is that you were mentioning right in the beginning how we should be mindful of what is our motivation to do things, and then you were distinguishing between being motivated, say, out of inspiration and love, and then being motivated out of fear. And then you said that we might be fearful, not necessarily for our lives, but fearful for, how other people perceive us or how they may judge us, etc. So now my question is, though, that part of, I would say, the benefit of, for instance, being in a community of other spiritual practitioners is partly that fear. You are, because if you say, for instance, you live in a society where no one is practicing any type of regulation, no one is practicing any type of spiritual principles, you can live in that society without feeling like any, like remorse or guilt for living a completely immoral life. But if not, for instance, you surround yourself with people that are sincere spiritual practitioners, if you, for instance, start breaking vows that you've taken, or if you act in a way which is against the culture, you will feel guilty and you will be fearful of others' judgments. So isn't there, like, in some instances, a place, for that? Can't that also be, in some instances, healthy, in some ways?
I would agree. Every emotion, also the ones we mentioned, they certainly have their place. Like also guilt and fear. Just recently, I listened to a lecture where Srila Prabhupada spoke about that we have a duty to protect. When he said, like, first, like he spoke to, first you have to protect yourself, and he meant Atma, the self, the soul. You have to protect it by, like, for example, seeking association of devotees where you can really nurture yourself, spiritual self-interest, protect yourself also from bad influences and so on. And also he mentioned how once to his own disciples, that he's concerned that they don't fear Maya or the illusory energy enough, that they're or also not like in that sense fearing, like, or like in terms of, I don't want to lose the association of those people who genuinely practice spiritual life and their shelter. And that's, I think, it's a healthy thing compared to, because it comes from a genuine concern for your spiritual self-interest, if it comes from that. If fear is simply dependency in a way, I can't function, or I'm not able to function because of, well, how to say, independent from person such and such, then we are at a different level, I think. So I think a line can be drawn between when I'm actively, unconsciously protecting my spiritual self-interest, and in this sense also my experience fear that partially motivates me. I think then it's still productive. And also guilt, yeah, it's a sign of conscience. You know, if you never feel guilty about anything, then there might be something to worry about. About you know, because we do stuff, or like we might fail to live up to principles, or fail people in different ways, or like fail our own, you know, self in terms of what we. Sometimes, for example, in relationships, people feel they give up themselves, or like they betray things they believe in. You know, there could be a deeper level also of guilt where they feel, hey, I actually betrayed myself thoroughly. So guilt is also an indication of something that was done wrong and needs like rectification. So yes, of course, guilt has its place. But if I'm simply guilt driven compared to being responsible for changing what needs to be changed, then it's not productive, because if I constantly beat myself up, or I'm such a bad person, then I cannot attain satisfaction, spiritual satisfaction, like this. Yes, that's what I would respond to that. All right. From the rest of you, any other thoughts or feedbacks, or like last words on today's session? Mindfulness over mindfulness. You can also see, I think on Facebook, there's nothing, at least I don't see something here, comments. All right. Okay, then I would suggest we close here for today. Okay, one more last Sharavia.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Prabhuji, for all your efforts and for your team. Really appreciate and found it interesting.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Just one last comment. And I think maybe again you could elaborate on this. So my last comment is, you were saying that we should think about what we, you know, how we are contributing maybe to our minds being over full.
Mhm.
You know, that was like your comment. But isn't it like, you know, that whatever is happening in our mind, ultimately we are responsible for, because regardless of what's happening outside, you know, that is the one place where we have maybe not full control, but we have choice.
Mhm.
But the question is just, are we conscious of, are we mindful of that choice? Or, you know, are we just unconscious and letting the mind just be like a, you know, like a runaway horse?
Mhm. Yes, I mean, what you're saying, I mean, I in principle agree. You know, of course, we have choices within our mind. We might enter this whole life already with a particular condition of mind, though. Also in astrology, it's interesting, you can understand that people can't help it to have a certain mindset, certain periods in their life based also on certain planetary influences. Some might say, but that's an excuse, you know, and you should just, you know, control your mind and like, but you will see even those who sincerely try, and also it's my own experience, certain periods in your life, your mind has a certain state. And no matter how you try, if it's not the time that your mind can make a shift, it won't happen. But this, I think the efforts accumulate also when the time is right, so to say, when it matures, then your mind is able, you know, and then with the planets also change, certain things become possible that had been not possible before. So, but certainly in each condition we have a capacity to look at what influences are we opening up for, you know, what influences are we allowing to our mind, you know, what do we feed our mind. It could also simply be the practice of detachment was mentioned before. Constantly remembering, for example, how others did me wrong, or wallowing in self-pity, for example, things, oh, where I have failed, increases, of course, the how to say, the tendency of the mind to stay with that and stay also with the feelings that come with it, instead of trying to genuinely forgive where forgiveness is due, so to speak, and to let go where it might be helpful to let go, and to allow new and more healthy influences on your mind. Yes, these things are there. Like when I asked the question, or like made the point that to look at how do I potentially make things difficult for me, it's about that, to see like, for example, also where do I unnecessarily carry burdens, you know, or hold on to things that I maybe could let go of also, or where do I insist, for example, to be right, although I know it's no point, and is there the same conflict over and over, stuff like that. Or like when I see it's actually not my responsibility, but then again I get myself involved and do it anyway, like that. Yeah, I think there were some words shared. Yeah. Individual strength, can be born out of extreme circumstances, like even a concentration camp, as it mentioned. Yeah, people feel compassion, although they experience like most heavy torture and abuse. All right. Okay, then let's be mindful of the things that we discussed in this session. Thank everyone for participating. I think it was a lovely session. I enjoyed and appreciated the exchange with all of you. And next week we're going to have again Dio Govinda Prabhu with us. He will have the topic we chose to discuss is the psychological effects of mantra chanting on the mind. So we continue with the mind. And Dio Govinda, he did a study many years ago, a truly scientific study, like with all the complexities that such a study includes, on the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, or the effect of chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra on depression, stress, and the three gunas. So that would be our starting point, and from there exploring the connection between what does mantra chanting make, or what effects does it have on the mind. So please feel all invited to join us in the session. The time will be a bit different. I think it will be 6:30 already my time, I guess a bit earlier, but I will give the details on my page soon. Okay, thank you very much and have a lovely evening. Hare Krishna.